during our busy seasons, we don't have regular family weekends. Their Saturdays are spent working, but we have just recently in our family implemented a hard and fast no working on Sundays rule.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I'm finding that it's not as unique as I thought it was. One of the things that I've done personally to help myself is invest in counseling, just to like kind of introspectively, where are my thoughts coming from and how can I be better at communicating with the ones around who I love. And even as a mom, like being a better communicator with my kids. The reason that I feel like I was able to get more involved is because our family invested in a business coach. So he was more of a not ag related, because we didn't know so many resources existed when we started on this journey.
Welcome to the Farm Family Harmony podcast. I'm Elaine Froese, Farm Family Coach, here with another episode full of transition tips, tactics, and sometimes hard truths to get harmony on your farm. Hi, folks. It's Elaine Froese, Farm Family Coach, here again for another episode of your Farm Family Harmony podcast. And I'm excited today to introduce you to Mary Pat Sass, who I had the pleasure of meeting in person at a Compeer event this past winter in Wisconsin with her husband, Josh. And Mary Pat and I have one-sided visits when I listen to her podcast that she does with Jenna called Beyond the Crop. So Mary Pat, tell us a little bit about your farm family and what's your life looking like right now.
Yeah, so it was so good to meet you as an attendee of the conference and hear you talk. It was really a great start to getting to know you better, Elaine. I'm so glad to have you in my life now. And I farm with my husband and our family in northern Illinois. So I don't actually consider myself the farmer because I'm not working on the farm 24/7 or 7 days a week anyway. But my husband farms with his two brothers and their dad and their parents and families all together on our row cropping operation in northern Illinois. So yeah.
So the theme today, and why I wanted you to be my guest today, is because one of the podcasts that you did on Beyond the Crops was talking about your role of scouting the crops. And I'm a seed grower spouse. My husband and son run a certified seed business. And in the early day of our marriage, Mary Pat, I would help with the roguing, taking the off types out of the plots and whatnot. But I am more of a support person too. I do the mills and keep things running and go to the bank and get parts and those kinds of things. So my role is not as an actual farmer operator. And what I wanted to delve in today with you is, how did you find your role on your farm? Because the fact that you do some scouting and whatnot is interesting to me. And also, what encouragement have you heard from the direct messages and things that you get on your Instagram account after you had that podcast about what you did for your farm operation?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a journey because I would say the scouting part of my role was always welcomed on the farm. Through college, I went to college for ag business and I minored in crop science. And I worked in the ag industry for 5 years. My job was really agronomy based. So I got a lot of experience in the field, scouting kind of what to look for. And I ended the role in ag technology. So I really just, I loved the crop growing side of things as far as farming goes. And so that I feel like no farmer is going to turn down scouting help, because walking the fields is kind of the last thing we have time for, especially in the early part of the growing season when it's super important and when there's something you can still do to help the crop.
Right.
And I would say I do less of that now with kids. It's harder to manage that time, but they know they can call me to get out there and check different things if needed. But the evolution, I guess, of my involvement on the farm has really changed, especially in the last couple of years, because I really did want to be more involved operationally. We have, like I said, 4 families. So there's also 4 wives helping with the supportive side, bringing the meals, running for parts. And I just felt like I wasn't involved at the capacity that I really wanted to be, as far as like filling my cup to feel like a part of the operation.
Mm-hmm. So what is your role right now? What would you say your job description is now?
So I still am very much in the supportive role shared with my sister-in-laws and my mother-in-law. And then during our busy seasons, I also help in the field. So I do some grain carting, tillage, rolling, kind of the more flexible jobs that can be done with the kids. And again, like the other supportive stuff, running for parts, kind of being the gopher girl, as they say, and a little bit of that scouting side of things too.
So how did you negotiate what your roles would be different? Do your sister-in-laws do some of the same crop work that you do? Because I remember I did a tweet once, Mary Pat, with a picture of my son beside me in the combine, and I got huge flack.
You were in the drivers?
Yeah, I was in the driver. I was driving the combine, and the picture was taken by somebody else, but I was given flack for the fact that I had children with me in a machine.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that many farm women and men have young children with them as they're operating large equipment.
Yep. But you were the one given the flack for it.
Yeah, well, and it's because I put something on Twitter, right? So,
yeah.
And, so there's this dance, I think, that young farm women have between, wanting to have decent childcare, having availability to childcare. And I am a grandma now, and I do childcare to help out and to keep the kids safe because the machines get bigger and bigger and whatnot. But I was just curious, what strategies do you use for childcare when it's not good for the kids to be with you? Like crop scouting, do you take the kids with you and leave them in the pickup truck or walk the fields together, or what are you doing?
So we do walk the fields together when they're short enough, but kind of when the crops start hitting the kids in the face is when it just gets too difficult. And they just...
There's a practical solution.
Yes. They just get really crabby. It's not... It does...
That's not going to work anymore.
It does take like 3 times as long no matter what if I bring them, but I am very fortunate. I know that finding childcare is hard, but the area that we farm is, I would call it pretty urban. So there's options, and we were able to find someone who I can use for daycare drop-in style, which is, she's wonderful, and I don't know what I would do without her, because one thing that I would say is very important as I've gotten more involved on the farm. My mother-in-law is a saint. She's been great as far as like being very involved in our kids' lives, but I never wanted to put more on her because of my dreams to like be more a part of the farm. So to have that person that's not related that I can pay to help out with the kids on an as-needed basis has been really important, but probably even bigger than that has been the support from Josh, because we have 2 kids. We were able to divide and conquer and have a lot of one-on-one time with each of our kids, which has been a real big blessing. And so far with the level of involvement that we've had with them on the farm, it hasn't been too much to where they're complaining about coming to the farm. They still really, really want to go. And we're able to, give them the attention as far as safety goes one-on-one. I very rarely have more than one at a time.
Right. And so that too. How do you see your role changing, Mary Pat, are the kids both in school?
Hank starts this August, so soon.
I've heard your podcast on how that's causing you some interesting reflection. So
yeah,
have you figured that out?
Yeah, I have. I don't know. I guess I just take it every like new season of life. I'm just always open to changing or doing whatever needs to happen so that our family can function the way that we need to function. So I don't know how exactly it'll change yet, but I guess being more involved operationally, my family has always understood that I'm going to have limitations.
Right.
The kids need to be brought to daycare. They need to be picked up from daycare. And the first season I helped out, I felt like I pushed it too far with the kids. I would pick them up from daycare. We would go out until dark and then start it all over again the next day. And we just got burned out. Like even 2 or 3 days of that was too much for them with how little they were. And so I just learned really quickly, like, boundaries are important. And yes, I want to be involved, but if my boundaries affect the business, then maybe I need to check what I can do and what I can be involved with for the good of everybody.
And that's very intuitive and very wise that you watched and respected what your children were needing, because it's going to be so little for such a short time, right?
Yep. Yep.
And it wasn't helping them or helping you. How do you see the role of your father-in-law and mother-in-law changing?
So I talk to them about that kind of often, just because I feel like since we've embraced the transition conversations in our family, it's kind of opened the doors for that. So asking them, what do you want the next 10 years to look like? What do you want to do? Like, how do you want to be involved in all of that? So I think, I don't know how their roles are exactly changing, but I am excited to see them feel the freedom to take more time away and like enjoy each other more at this stage of life. And really just, they love what we do too. My father-in-law loves farming. He loves being involved on the operation. He taught me how to drive grain cart. Like, I was the first day I drove was for him, and it was terrifying because I didn't want to screw up. But he was actually way more patient with me, or maybe he just didn't tell me what he wanted changed. But he was super patient with me. And my mother-in-law she's very caring, so she loves to like provide the meals and, be out there and be the kind of the go-to woman, like the first line call when somebody needs something.
And she doesn't have young children anymore, so that helps.
But she loves to be with the kids too, which is great, and have them along and focus her energy on them a lot too.
So there's interesting insights in your transition conversations that the founders, your parents-in-law, need to have some time away, but they love also being on the farm and in the heated moment and in the action. And one of the terms that we use on our coaching team is stepping back without stepping away.
Mm-hmm.
And as this is a conversation on roles and how they change, I think that's an important piece of language that people need to start practicing. Dad, we're not trying to push you off this farm. Mom, there's going to be a role for you, but we see you getting tired. I also like, what you said, Mary Pat, about not expecting your mother-in-law to be a daycare.
Yep.
Because I've had some situations where mother-in-laws have said, I don't want to be expected to be taking care of the kids all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about Josh's role for you as a partner for you? Like, you're a podcaster, you're going to conferences. How do you negotiate your role as a farm woman in agriculture, plus what you do with your practice, your podcasts and the other things you do outside of the farm? What are your sort of hacks, I guess, Mary Pat, for helping that happen?
I think it's just really, really good communication with him, because I have a tendency to say yes to too many things. And especially the last couple of years, I've just learned like it's not sustainable for our kids and our family dynamic if I'm over committing. So really just getting clear with what we want our life to look like. And that makes the decision on what to say yes to a lot easier. And I'm very protective, I guess, of my time at this point and how I'm spending it.
Manage your time with Google Calendar, and do you and Josh sit down and have frequent check-ins with each other? Do you look at what the next week looks like? How often do you touch base on that?
You might be surprised to find that I'm still old school, and I have a paper calendar. My computer's sitting on top of it right now. I have a paper planner, and then I have a little spot in that planner where I write down things that I need to talk to Josh about. And it's like my little Josh corner.
Okay.
And I think we visit, it depends on the season. Like in season, when we're both working and busy together, we check in multiple times a day with each other and help each other out. Like, who's getting the kids, who's doing that, where do we need to be to make the next move for the farm to be moving forward. And then off season, I would say we try to check in like twice a week. So one during the week, what are you doing this week? What's your goals? Probably the most healthy thing for our marriage has been, how can I help you succeed? with the, whether it's, helping with the kids, understanding what he wants to get done and that I'm not the only one who has things that she wants to get done, like really respecting that we both have important things on our lists. And sometimes that important thing is doing the laundry. Like,
Yes. Let's be practical here.
yes. So I think that has really helped. And then also the weekends. So during our busy seasons, we don't have regular family weekends. Their Saturdays are spent working, but we have just recently in our family implemented a hard and fast no working on Sundays rule.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I'm finding that it's not as unique as I thought it was.
Oh, good. Well, depends which part of the listening area this is hitting, because we once had a magazine article done on us when Ian was 2. So that was like 33 years ago. And it was considered weird that we don't work on Sundays. But for us, it's part of, again, when you talk about roles and responsibilities, you need a rest, you need church time, family time, and renewal time. And our employees love it because they get 52 Sundays off a year.
Yep.
Yeah. So when did you make that shift, Mary Pat?
The spring.
Okay.
Yep. There was a vote, and it's been a great dynamic shift for the family because, as you can imagine, having 4 families and 3 siblings working together is, we can all really, really love each other so much and like give the shirt off our backs for each other and still struggle with wants and desires and aligning those. So it's been great for our family dynamic to have that one consistent Sunday off every week.
Well, it gives you a rhythm to your week, right?
Yes, it does. Mm-hmm. And so the weekend thing is really, in our off season, to have Josh and I communicate how we want to spend that time has been helpful as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm smiling that you think you're old school, but my daughter-in-law does exactly the same thing as you. She's got these beautiful planners and paper, and that's another thing, because you and I in another podcast have talked about the in-law factor, is that it's very important for me as the mother-in-law and the grandma to get some sense of what her week looks like as well, so that we can talk about, especially like you said, in the busy season, trade off the meals. I'm the one who still does most of the delivery because it's much easier for me to deliver because she's got 3 kids in tow, but they're getting bigger now and they sometimes do come with me and I'm still driving the pickup and make deliveries. But I think it's also that mutual respect that your time involved in the farm, your time involved in the family, your time involved in your off-farm work, it's all respected as being valued. And I just would like to encourage the listeners that are hearing our stories today to really think about how they ask for what they need and how they also respect and ask other people what they need. And I think sometimes in the busy season, I would almost fall over if someone came up to me and say, "Hey, Mom, I know it's been really busy, but what do you need?"
Oh,
because I'm just doing a shout out of appreciation to all the women in agriculture who give and give and give until their tank is totally depleted, and then where does the filling up come?
Right. I think that's so important because one of the things that I've done personally to help myself is invest in counseling, just to like kind of introspectively, where are my thoughts coming from and how can I be better at communicating with the ones around who I love? And even as a mom, like being a better communicator with my kids. And one thing, I was having a hard spring, and it was the spring that I was overcommitted and was bringing my kids out to the field too late, and it just wasn't working for our dynamic. I talked to my counselor and I said, I just wish someone would ask me what I need right now. Nobody's asking me. And she's like, are you asking them? And I was like, nope, not. So reality check, like it's not always what you need, but it's like giving, and you should never be giving to get, but it's like, if you're not at all trying to like empathize or be in that person's life, but you're expecting so much from them, then who do you think you are, kind of thing,
And the biblical version of that comes from James. You do not have because you do not ask.
Uh-huh.
And so I also, when we're talking about roles and responsibilities on the farm, if you're doing something that you don't like to do or don't want to continue doing, and my big epiphany was last summer, I turned over my garden to my daughter-in-law and a friend, and it was an experiment. And at that season, my daughter-in-law had lots of time to do the weeding, and my grandson liked to be with her, so it was a good spot for him to be outside playing alongside her. The other person didn't realize what they'd taken on. So it was a learning time. And again, I like to also use the phrase, where is it written that farm women have to have gardens? And now I'm this summer in a different place, missing my fresh spinach and lettuce kinds of things. Still have picking rights, so that's good. But it's these stories we tell ourselves too. I think, Mary Pat, and I have a coach who I meet with as well. And she's a therapist in another province, but she's not allowed to be a therapist in mine, so we call her a coach. But it's very interesting to me in our circle of relationships through other podcasters, where it's becoming less and less of a stigma to say, oh, I have a counselor, or I have a therapist. And
Yep.
I think the other thing that is heading out the way as this podcast get aired is to think about the stresses and the resiliency that you need in agriculture today in this time, in this season, with commodity prices dropping and your seasons changing, is that resilience that you continue to work on is really important, and that your role is not always going to be the same.
Yeah.
And I actually, when I spoke, used to have physical hats. And one hat that I would put on was a baseball cap with a white index card stapled to it called date. And I'm also a firm believer that the other role that you have to protect is your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you and Josh have date night, or what do you do to pay attention to your marriage?
Definitely at this stage in life, it's getting some time away from our kids. As much as we love spending time with them, just getting that disconnect to have conversations is really what I think helps us build the trust and communication between the two of us. So regular date nights, we're not afraid to invest in a babysitter for that either, like finding people. And it's really hard. I don't live close to my family, so we have, if it can feel like there's a lot of pressure, I guess, because I don't want to use his mom too much. And we have aunts and uncles around, but they all have little kids too. So it's hard to expect family to step up all the time. So just really being the leader in finding help to get away and have some one-on-one time.
Do you ever barter your time? What I used to do with, especially with Ian, he had a little friend named Stephen. So every Tuesday, Ian would go to Stephen's house, and every Thursday, Stephen would come to my house. And so as a young mom, I knew I had one day a week free and clear, first, probably from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m, to really do things that I needed to concentrate.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people forget about bartering.
Yeah.
Changing time for time.
I think I haven't done that yet. This is maybe more of a personal problem, but I'm the person that I'll offer, hey, you want, your kids can come over, we'll hang out. But I'm never the one to be like, if mine can go to yours.
So again, I give you permission to ask, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and again, you're respectful of other people's times and wishes, but you never know unless you ask. And another coaching saying we have even put on T-shirts sometimes is, love does not read minds. So you can't what is happening for the other person. Talk a little bit more about what farm women and men listening to this should do when they get into that place of near burnout or anxiety and overwhelm because they have taken on too much. And that would be something that I also defer to my husband to check with. I am now limiting the number of times I leave the farm as a professional speaker to about 15 or 16 times a year. because it's a day to go, a day to speak, and a day to get back. And so you multiply 15 by 3, that's 45 days away.
Yeah.
And one time my TripIt app said, Elaine, you've been away 90 days this year. And I just was like, ooh, that's,
Wow.
yeah. And some of that was Wes was with me, but yeah. And I'm a grandma, I'm not a full-time parent anymore. So what do you track your time somehow? How do you now that you've understood this about yourself of being overcommitted in some of the roles that you want to take on? How do you keep that in check?
Well, I definitely lean on my husband a lot for that, as far as like deciding when to say yes and when to say no and whatnot. But also with the time away from my kids, I left my corporate job to be a stay-at-home mom and spend time with them. So I'm not filling my schedule to where I'm using daycare 5 days a week. My max is 3. For the most part, it's 2. This week it's 0. Like I love the time with my kids. So I realize if I'm about to hit my max of time that I need to be away from my kids, then I need to really be even more cut through.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I think that's one way, but also just being in clear communication with my husband about it. And as far as being away, that's even more difficult, especially at this stage in life, arranging childcare with him or because I am the default parent. Like I am the one who will take them to daycare, pick them up. Like that's my job if I'm using daycare. So it's another layer if I have to be traveling somewhere. My husband's very supportive and wants me to, because there's amazing opportunities if you're putting yourself out there the way both of us are and sharing stories and connecting with people. There's really incredible income opportunities for your family. But there's definitely sacrifices made when you're away. So we have to weigh all of that.
Well, and I remember a woman coming up to me at a conference and saying, Elaine, please go home and thank your husband for giving you time away to be with us.
Yeah.
And that was very poignant to me, because she realized the sacrifices being made by more than one person in the family to deliver the messages that were being received. So that's good. What about technology, Mary Beth? Mary Pat, I'm calling you Mary Beth.
That's okay. Don't worry. Yeah.
There's a woman in our town named Mary Beth. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
So what technologies are you seeing that are good for helping people maybe navigate more than one role going forward? Or what are you concerned about because your Instagram account is very robust and you get a lot of direct messages. So what do you hear from women in agriculture right now in this season as to some of their challenges with the roles that they're expected to do?
I think the biggest challenge is maybe, especially women who are the daughter-in-law like I am, is that they don't have a place or they don't know how to find their place. And one thing I haven't shared yet, but I think is a super important part of my story, is the reason that I feel like I was able to get more involved is because our family invested in a business coach. So he was more of a not ag related, because we didn't know so many resources existed when we started on this journey. So we started just with he was more of a like a relational type of coach. So we started meeting as a family with him just to really start having those hard conversations, because they just weren't happening before that at all. And so I would talk to my husband about wanting to be more involved on the farm, but it was always like kind of a taboo thing. Like there's three wives. The other 2, one of them homeschools, one of them is a school teacher at the school in our town. And I was kind of like this in the middle, had these like side hustles. My kids kind of go to daycare, kind of don't, but I really love farming because I grew up on it. And it is all I've ever like really wanted to do.
And you have a degree in agriculture. Hello.
Yes. So it was just kind of weird at first. Like I didn't know if I could be a part of it, but also I never asked and I never put my feelings out there. So anyway, my husband definitely vouched for me before we had this business coach. But what really turned the corner was we sat down and just were able to talk and say what was on our hearts. And, just even speaking it made me emotional with my whole family because I wanted it so bad. And there was concerns brought up, which were hard to hear, but understandable. And basically the way the conversation was ended was, I would love to try. And if you guys are willing to give me a shot to be more involved, that's all I'm asking for.
Mm-hmm. And then you got it.
Yep.
Yep. Because it was on the table.
Yep. But it took years to get there. And I know a lot of the women who watch what I share or talk to me about that journey and the journey that I'm still continuing on, because as we've talked about, your roles change and evolve as your season of life changes and evolves. And they just, they want a seat at the table, or they have a desire to do something that they haven't felt that they could ask for yet. Mm. And so seeing someone else do it and have that encouragement to just try, because you'll never know unless you try.
Right.
And that's the reason that I still continue to put myself out there, is because I know it's positively impacting other women out there who have a desire to be more involved. Mm-hmm. Or to change their role that they're currently in.
And my curiosity with the coach, what was the tipping point, or what was the breakthrough that the family was finally willing to engage an outside party to help facilitate and get you to the table and ask hard questions?
I think it was the realization that we couldn't do it on our own.
Oh, really? Do it yourself?
Yeah.
Always work on a farm. Is this true?
With 3 brothers working together, I've worked with other farm families because I traveled with my other job in agronomy, and I've watched people scream at each other in the farmyard over the stupidest things. And I've seen those kinds of dynamics. So when I met my husband and was starting to get involved in his family farm, I'm like, nobody yells. When something breaks, they just fix it. This is weird. Like, it felt weird.
Awesome. This is not weird.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
So I thought everything was hunky-dory and like, we're just going to be great forever. But then, you get kids and wives and families growing and goals changing. We just couldn't do it on our own. And so working on that interpersonal work with a third party to just say, whoa, 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 it's not your turn to talk. Have someone else say that rather than mother-in-law or father. Yes, give them what is that again?
This is my baby bull talking stick. Yes, yep. This is why we have this. Don't interrupt me.
Yeah, so having someone coach you through that, because we aren't born with these communication skills, especially with the ones that we love, because, it's easy to lash out or do something because they aren't going anywhere because they love you.
Well, and it's family, right? So let's be careful here how we treat our friends and our family. It's been awesome, Mary Pat, to hear more of your story and the unfolding. And this is a total side note, but one thing I noticed about you when I met you in person in Wisconsin, you have these amazing boots. So tell me about your boots.
Okay, well, my girl, Paige, she lives in Central Illinois, has a business called No Roots Boots.
Okay.
It's a small business, and she sources and designs boots. So definitely look into that. She's on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's where you find your nice boots. So
yes.
No. So we were out with the grandkids at the Peace Garden, which is a beautiful international garden here on the border of America and Canada. And we live on mile 16, and we started seeing these boots were made for walking. And it's delightful when, as a farm woman and a woman in agriculture, you can wear many hats, but you can also be very present in the role that you're called to do. So you're present when you're podcasting, you're present with Josh on Sundays when you're having family time and community time, and you're also present when you're out scouting and doing the fields and using your ag skills that you brought to the table when you got married into this family. So I want to thank you for being vulnerable and being courageous to share your story. Not everybody is willing to do that, and I really hope that it gives a lot of pause to our listeners listening to this podcast today to know that it's okay to ask for what you need. And it's okay to understand that your roles as a young woman in agriculture will change and unfold. And for me, as an older woman in agriculture and as a grandmother, it's also important to be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes, to think about what they're thinking about and what they're how their roles and needs and aspirations are changing too. So blessings on your journey, Mary Pat. Don't know when I'll see you in person, but thank you so much for spending this time today. Just as we wrap up, what's the best way for people to connect and have conversations with you directly?
Yeah, I would say over on Instagram, I'm the most active. It's at marypat.sass. And also the podcast, Jenna and I really like to continue conversations like this over there and continue to bring encouragement to other women and farm families trying to navigate life at this stage with young kids. And, there's a lot of stuff to think about. And sometimes it's hard to find those people to relate to. So that's really my mission in that.
Right. And I think we're both called to that mission of being encouragers and being practical with ways to help the journey unfold in a really good way. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank
so that's
you.
a wrap. That's a wrap for today, folks. And I'm off to the lake to spend time with my sister-in-law. I'm not sure when this podcast is hitting your ears, but we're really glad that you're here. And if you want to hear more about the tools that we have at farmfamilycoach.com, just reach out to us and we'll see you next time. Stay well and be happy. Bye for now.